Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Morning, Gary.
I'm great. I appreciate you guys having me. How you been?
Oh, we're doing good. Tell us about coaching for literacy. I know Alabama-Missouri is a game that's being kind of sponsored by that as well. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with this.
Yeah, tomorrow when you watch the Alabama-Missouri game, you'll see Nate and his staff wearing green ties and/or green lapel pins, and that is designed to help bring awareness to the Coaching for Literacy foundation that is based in Memphis and was started just a few years ago. It's wild to think, but 65% studies show of American fourth graders are not reading at grade level. That was surprising the first time I heard that, because we think of ourselves as, this advanced, wealthy nation, and we are in a million different ways, but for a variety of reasons, we are struggling with just a basic reading comprehension. And so what Coaching for Literacy does is, through players and teams and businesses, bring attention to this real issue in our country and raise money for this issue in our country, because what studies also show is that if you struggle to read, you also struggle to get a job. You're more likely to commit a crime. You're more likely to live in poverty. It's all connected. And so this money that will be raised in conjunction with this game will be reinvested in the Tuscaloosa area through the Head Start program. So when you raise money in Alabama, it helps children in Alabama. And so I can't thank Nate enough for he and his staff being involved in this. And if people want to learn more, they can go to coachingforliteracy.org. Or if you want to donate by phone, you can just text, and you can get all of that information on the website coachingforliteracy.org when you click on the Alabama logo. But it's Tied for Literacy at 71777. Just text Tied for Literacy to 71777.
Yeah, there's a Twitter account also at Coaching for Lit. I just retweeted the place where you can go donate as well. Dab?
How does this work? Does it go into I think you kind of stated a little bit about that, into a fund? Does it go to pay a particular schools or particular individuals? How does that really work?
It works differently in each community. I believe in this community, it's going to work through the Head Start program. And so that's the terrific thing about this, is that when, Coaching for Literacy helps a game in L.A., it helps children in L.A. If you do a game in Memphis, it helps children in Memphis. If you do a game in Chicago, it helps children in Chicago. And so whatever money is raised via this game this weekend, it'll be reinvested through the Head Start program, and it'll have a real impact on children in your community. That's obviously great to stay on a very surface level, but it also, we hope, helps fans of a particular school get more involved if they're able to do so, because you know that it's helping people who are possibly your neighbors, who possibly go to school with your children and our classmates.
Wow, what a great cause there. So we'll let you know how to find it at the end, but it's been retweeted on our account, so hopefully we can help kids here in this area a great deal with the Missouri-Alabama game tomorrow. Gary, tell me about what your impression is of Nate Oates. I know what the people around the program think, but you're a national guy. You see a lot of basketball. Memphis is a basketball hotbed. What's your feeling about Nate Oates and what he's done so far here at Alabama?
I'm impressed. I know it got off to a rough start, but if you look at the past 10 games, he's really got that team playing the way he wants them to play. 7-3 in the past 10, and the 3 losses, nothing embarrassing about them. I mean, they're all road losses to top 50 teams. Like, that's not what's going to hurt you on Selection Sunday. And so if you look around the country, it can be difficult for first-year coaches, even super accomplished guys who inherit interesting pieces, to just grab those pieces and go the way they want to go immediately, because these players aren't used to you. You're not used to these players. They've never been coached by you, perhaps by somebody like you. And if you look at Mick Cronin and UCLA, not going well. You look at John Brannon at Cincinnati, not going well. There seems to be a connection problem. So it shouldn't be a surprise that that Alabama got off to a, relatively speaking, rough start. But now they're playing fast. They're playing well. They've obviously just handed an in-state rival its first loss of the season, and it wasn't like some squeak it out at the end situation. They dominated them almost from tip to final buzzer. And so that program, that team specifically, but the program in general, is headed in the right direction. And I don't know if in the first 2 weeks of the season we would have thought they could get to the NCAA tournament, because they did take some questionable losses and do some damage to the resume. But as we sit here right now, they're top 50 in the net, top 50 at KenPom. That by definition has you in play. So I know the record isn't what people want, but the computer numbers say Alabama is better than that record. And if they get on a little streak here and the schedule sets up to allow them to do it, we're going to be talking about them as a possible NCAA tournament team.
Yep, that.
We're looking at sort of a different kind of basketball season. I don't know how exactly to say that, but we don't really have anybody, maybe outside of Gonzaga, just running off with anything. Oregon got beat again last night. A little bit different. Any comment? And I don't really think it's a one and done, as everybody would like to point to. It's just maybe the recruiting has sort of been spread out a little bit more, and the leagues are. I'm not sure our league is quite as good as it has been. I think it's dropped down a little bit league-wise. But do you sense a little bit of difference in college basketball this year, and if so, why?
Well, there's definitely a difference, and one of the things you just said is contributing to it. The players, the talent is spread out, or at least it went to different places.
Yeah.
Like Washington has 2 5-star freshmen right now. What if they were at Arizona instead? Or somewhere, or a traditional power instead. Memphis got Precious Achiuwa as a 5-star. What if he was at Kentucky instead? Memphis enrolled James Wiseman as a 5-star. What if he goes to Kentucky and never actually quits that team or gets in trouble with the NCAA? They look a lot different. So you combine that with the fact that Cole Anthony has been hurt. R.J. Hampton went overseas. LaMelo Ball went overseas. So when you go James Wiseman, Cole Anthony, R.J. Hampton, and LaMelo Ball, those are 4 of the top 10 could-be freshmen in the country, and they're not playing college basketball right now. If R.J. Hampton were at Kansas, what would Kansas look like? Maybe the most dominant team in the country. If Wiseman were at Kentucky, maybe Kentucky would be a monster. If Precious Achiuwa were at Duke, maybe Duke would be a monster. So some of it is that. And then I think the other part of it is, there's a real talent drain on the sport, because more players than ever, literally more players than ever, are leaving school early to pursue professional opportunities. It used to be that if you had a projected first-round pick and you're a basketball coach, you should plan on losing him because you probably are. Now, it's like if you've got a top 80 guy, you better plan on losing him, because if you're going to get picked in the second round, the odds are you're going to get a professional contract of some sort. And so you go. And now with G League opportunities, 2-way contracts, Exhibit 10 contracts, overseas opportunities, more players than ever are trying to bounce to the professional ranks as quickly as possible. It happened right there in your state. I mean, what happens if everybody who was eligible to return to Auburn returned to Auburn? I mean, obviously Auburn's good. They were 15-0 2 nights ago. But if Jared Harper's back, instead of going undrafted, that team's even stronger than it would be. So the talent being spread around, some of the best freshmen not being in college basketball, and people leaving more often early as they can, has all contributed to what we're watching right now. I think Bill Self at Kansas summed it up best. He said there's not a great team, and the reason there's not a great team is because we have a lower number of great players in this country playing college basketball right now.
Yeah, okay. Good point. We're talking with Gary Parrish with CBS Sports. Got the Gary Parrish Show on 92.9 up in Memphis. Gary, this is probably just me. Whenever I see LSU and Will Wade on the sideline, it makes my skin crawl. When this FBI thing came out, everybody thought, wow, this is going to really blow up college basketball. But as time's gone on, it's kind of just died down. These guys are all still on the sidelines. The guys that all the head coaches are. There were some assistants that I guess maybe dove on the sword and went out. Is there anything else coming out of this FBI thing? It seems to be moving extremely slow, and I can't believe all these head guys kept their jobs.
I can't either. It's pretty embarrassing for the sport, and I like all of those guys who got caught up in this stuff on a personal level. I've known Will since he was a young assistant at Clemson. I've known Sean Miller forever. I've known Bill Self since I got into this job, and I like him a lot. But it's undeniable at this point that those programs were cheating. I mean, Will Wade was caught on a wiretap discussing not only his attempt to cheat in real time, but comparing it to other deals he had done in the past. That was the root of his frustration on that wiretap call. I can't believe I can't get this deal done for Javonte Smart. I've done deals before that were bigger than this and less complicated than this. Like, it's on a wiretap, and he's still coaching, making millions of dollars. Meantime, you compare it to what we just watched in Major League Baseball. 3 managers, 10% of the professional baseball managers in this country were fired this week because they got caught cheating or they were involved in cheating. And yet, I made the joke on Twitter, but it's one of those jokes that's rooted in truth. If they were college basketball coaches, they wouldn't be fired. They would probably be working on multi-million-dollar contracts because basketball coaches, more than anybody else on this planet, as far as I know, at least successful ones, they forever get the benefit of the doubt. And so I'm with you. The idea that we could be sitting here all these years later after the FBI launched that investigation and announced that investigation and the results of it, the idea that Rick Pitino is the only head coach that lost his job is pretty embarrassing, but not surprising, because I think it's been true for a long time now. About the worst thing you can be in this sport is not a cheater. Cheaters can stay employed as long as the NCAA doesn't make it nearly impossible to stay employed. Losing coaches, those are the ones that can't stay employed, and I guess we've got a decade's worth of evidence to support that.
Sure, Dave.
We all have a tendency to knock the NCAA and the way they handle things, and I think in some cases it's true, in some cases it's not. Are they doing? You sort of indicated that they're not doing. Are they organized in such a way? I know they have lawyers now. The thing that's been bothering me a lot is the infractions committees are made up of the chemistry teacher at Colgate, right. instead of having real, sure enough, people that understand college basketball or understand sports. Are we improving at all of that with the NCAA?
I guess we could say it's improving, but nobody will believe it until, like, somebody who appears to have been got caught cheating, really pays a significant price. I do think that's coming, because right now there's a notice of allegations at Kansas. There's a notice of allegations at NC State. People assume, and I believe accurately, that Arizona will get one, that LSU will probably get one. I think it's expected someday that Auburn will get one. Yeah. And if they punish the coaches, the head coaches, nobody cares about the assistants. Most people don't know. But if you really, suspend Bill Self for 2 years, suspend Sean Miller for 2 years, make Arizona and Kansas and schools like that have been essentially, in most people's mind, caught cheating. If you make those schools really make hard choices, because here's something I think some fans don't realize. The NCAA cannot make Kansas fire Bill Self. They cannot make Arizona fire Sean Miller. They have no control over who is employed and not employed at a university. All the NCAA can do is punish you so severely and put so many sanctions on your head coach that it makes it impractical for you to keep him or her. And if the NCAA does that at Kansas, does that at Arizona, then people will believe that that organization has some real teeth and is at least trying to clean up the sport. But unless they do that, and until they do that, folks from coast to coast will remain skeptical, because what we have seen, again, for decades, but certainly in recent years, is the punishment rarely, if we're calling these things crimes, fits the crimes. The head coaches at successful programs, you can shoot bullets at them, but they miss more often than not, and they stay employed more often than not.
We're talking with Gary Parrish. Gary, paying players on likeness. Dad and I both recruited forever. I just don't see any. I think it's going to really make it accessible. I don't see any way to do it and make it not just where it's. I don't know. I mean, if I'm a big school, I got big boosters.
Right.
How in the world will this work?
Well, you are right. If I believe what you're implying is that there's no way to do it without it becoming a recruiting tool.
Yeah.
You know, and the NCAA is trying to thread that needle. I just think it's an impossible needle to thread. When they announce that they're going down this path, but they insist it cannot be a recruiting tool, my initial thought, and still to this day, is, well, okay, explain to me how you do that. Because you're not going to be able to prove intent. Let's just keep it for Alabama. Is an Alabama car dealer going to put an Alabama running back on a billboard for $500,000 because they really think it helps the business, or because that's a way to show every running back prospect in the country, come to Alabama and you will be taken care of? We all know what the answer to that would be, but how would the NCAA prove one way or another? And so I think the only way it quote unquote works, allowing student athletes to profit off name, image, and likeness, is just to acknowledge from the jump this is going to be a recruiting tool, and it's going to allow Duke and North Carolina and Kentucky to have the resources to recruit the best prospects in the country in men's basketball, and it will allow Alabama and Clemson and USC and Ohio State to have the resources that other schools don't have and the advantages other schools don't have to recruit the best football prospects in the country. And I guess what I would say in conjunction with that is it really wouldn't change the order of things that much. It would mean that Alabama has an incredible recruiting advantage in football over Alabama State, but Alabama already has a recruiting advantage over Alabama State and everybody else. And so it would, yes, put money directly in the pockets of student athletes, and yes, it would ensure that the programs in whatever sport with the biggest corporate backing and the most intense boosters would year in and year out get the best prospects. But if you go look at the recruiting rankings annually in football and men's basketball, that's kind of already the way it works. And so I lean toward doing that, but I also understand that the NCAA almost certainly isn't going to be willing to go as far as I would like them to go, because if you allow that, you suddenly lose control of a lot of the money, millions and millions of dollars that gets moved around. And I don't think you're going to have university presidents willingly giving up control of millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody told us one day on the show that in the state of Texas, there's 75 billionaires. So I know Alabama has a lot of success going into Texas, but Texas A&M and Texas could probably close the borders with those billionaires over there about what they can offer kids to come there.
Yeah, it would be fascinating, unlike anything we've ever seen. But I think if you're trying to argue in favor of it, one thing it would do is it would eliminate scandal, recruiting scandals from college athletics, because, simply put, if you allow anything to go, then nothing is cheating. The only way you can get a speeding ticket is because there are speed limits. If there are speed limits, you get no speeding tickets anymore. Same thing with college basketball or football or any other sport recruiting. If you allow boosters and corporations and businesses to do whatever they want to do, provide whatever they want to provide for student athletes, then there's no cheating anymore. And we could get back to just talking strictly about what happens on a field or on a court, because so often in college athletics, we don't talk about those things. We talk about FBI investigations and Odell Beckham Jr. handing out money after an LSU national championship. So one of the positives, and sure, I can acknowledge there are some negatives as well, but one of the positives would be that we wouldn't have recruiting scandals anymore, because we would know exactly why everybody goes everywhere. It would be documented and all above board, because it would be allowed.
Gary, before we let you go, once again, tell everybody how they can help with this Coaching for Literacy game here in Tuscaloosa tomorrow.
All of the information is on coachingforliteracy.org. You can obviously get there on your desktop, on your phone, any way you can get to a website. coachingforliteracy.org. Look for the Alabama logo. It's there on the homepage, and you'll learn a lot about a wonderful foundation, learn a lot about how this game tomorrow is going to help children in the state of Alabama. And I can't thank you guys enough for even letting me spend a couple of minutes bringing attention to it. You're really nice to do that.
Appreciate it, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.